This video is sponsored by Squarespace. The fight for the preservation of childhood innocence supposes that children are blank pages on which adults can apply various stereotypes. In the case of girls, those stereotypes are the innocent, which is morally good, and the erotic, which is morally wrong. It is believed that children, girls in particular, are inherently innocent, but that the hypersexual nature of society drew them towards the erotic. The Britney Spears cover shows this ambivalence. She embodies the innocent and the erotic at the same time. She catalyzes the fear of parents and adults in general, a fear that their daughters or sisters might lean towards their erotic self and lose their innocence. Society is in charge of assessing what is erotic and what is not. And when I say society, I mean parents, politicians, commentators, armed with alarming reports warning of the increased sexualization of girls in the media. One common flaw of these articles, these reports, is precisely the tendency to assign the erotic label to things that clearly aren't. Now sure, there are products like strappy high-heeled sandals for 6-year-olds, bikinis for 2 to 3 years old, padded bras and thongs for preteens that clearly have a sexual connotation, but these remain fairly uncommon. When public figures warn about the increasing sexualization of teen girls, they rather focus on things like crop tops, skirts, shorts, tank tops, and in those cases, the sexualization of the girl is rather the result of a sexualizing gaze. Now, what do I mean by sexualizing gaze? Let's do a little test. I'm gonna read a small passage to you and then you tell me what you think about it.
Dear Professor Kincaid, I never do this kind of thing, but my roommate keeps telling me I should. She says, go ahead and tell him if you feel like it. So I am. I really like your class and the way you have of explaining things. I mean, I read these poems and they don't mean a thing to me until you start talking, and then they do. It's the way you talk that is different from the other teachers I've had in the English department, who may know more than you, but can't get it across, if you know what I mean. But when you were saying that the Romantic poets wrote about feelings, unlike the 17th century poets like Pope, who didn't, I knew right away what you meant. I have a lot of feelings myself, though I'm not exactly a poet, haha. But anyhow, I just wanted to say thanks and hope you keep it up, because I really like it.
So, what do you think about it? What sort of assumptions do you make? This is a letter written by who we assume to be a female student to a male professor. She really enjoyed his classes because they allowed her to see poetry in a different way, to finally understand it, and she wanted to tell him. When I read this passage, I was reminded of the feeling I get when I have a meaningful conversation with a friend, or when I finally understand something, when I get a new perspective on something, you know? Now this girl, the student, wanted to share that feeling with the person who triggered it. She wanted to encourage him to keep it up. That's what she says, to keep teaching the way he does. Now get ready for it. This is how Kincaid understood the letter.
That note, unsigned and heartfelt, expresses true desire. My admirer hopes that I will keep it up because he or she likes it, and he or she writes me this note hoping that I will like it. I will like it, and he or she will like it, and we will, together, keep it up because it is fun for both of us to like and be liked, and to keep being liked without end. Nobody reaches the finish line, nobody is empowered, and nobody is victimized either. If my perceptive student and I go beyond writing notes and make all this material, it will not be because I have something to give and he or she to take, or vice versa, but because we like it and we want to keep it up. A physical relationship will not be progress, just different.
That is exactly what I mean by sexualizing gaze. Kincaid assumed that the letter was a love letter, almost an erotic letter, an invitation to maybe, quote, go beyond writing notes and make all this material. We like it and want to keep it up. A physical relationship will not be progress, just difference. So going back to the teen girls and sexuality debate, we now understand how crucial it is to consider the girl's perspective, you know. It is essential to avoid falling for inaccurate stereotypes like that of the innocent versus the erotic child. Girls' formation of a sexual self is much more complex than that. Now, to be honest with you, I feel like this dimension is kind of lacking from our online and in real life discussions on teenage girls' sexuality. We too often adopt an authoritative approach that ultimately silences teenage girls. That silencing takes many forms. We silence when we prevent them from developing a sexual self, but we also silence them when we overprotect them from the sexualizing gaze. In both cases, we reduce the agency of these girls, the complexities of their experiences. So in this video, I want to explore teenage girl sexuality from the perspective of teenage girls. My goal is not to judge them, but rather to understand how do they navigate those years, and how do they inform their choices. When we talk about girls, teenage girls' sexuality, we have to talk about the notion of reputation. Sociologists have shown that girls very quickly integrate it and either behave in ways that will preserve it or in ways that will provoke it. But it must be said that girls aren't necessarily free to choose to act this way or that way. Their culture, class, ethnicity will naturally orient them towards two competing discourses that you must remember because I'm gonna talk about them throughout the video: the can-do girl and the girl at risk. Basically, the can-do discourse tells girls that they can do what they want, they are free, liberated, #girlboss, #girlpower. The at-risk discourse, on the other hand, tells girls to behave according to a set of moral principles in order to avoid things like teen pregnancy, crime, drug taking, STDs, etc. Working class women are more likely to be targeted by the girl at risk discourse because they are more likely to be exposed to those very risks. For many of them, maintaining a reputation despite all those risks is about ensuring a smooth transition from teenagehood to motherhood, which in turn gives them a social status, a sort of recognition in their family but also in their community. I said for many of them because obviously they are exceptions to the rule. For middle-class teenage girls, on the other hand, young motherhood is seen as something to be avoided because it reduces one's opportunities, career opportunities. These girls have been told from an early age that having a good education is what is going to give them independence, an ownership over their bodies and lives. Now that this very important distinction is made, I want to look at how girls, teenage girls, forge their sexual self. A lot of the studies I found on this topic were a bit old and primarily focused on girls' magazines. I'm old enough to have had some of those magazines in my own hands, but I remember that girls and teenage girls would rather watch things like reality TV. Like girls' magazines, reality TV was something that we were excited to talk about at school. We all had our crushes, we would talk about the couples in the shows, we also fantasized about actors, singers, boys in our classrooms, teachers even. Now obviously those fantasies and early erotic desires did not mean that we understood what sexuality was. We enjoyed the fantasies, we enjoyed thinking about what it would be like to date this or that celebrity. We enjoyed how it made us feel, but we didn't necessarily see ourselves as sexual beings. It's crucial to make that distinction. Having erotic thoughts did not mean that we felt ready to engage in sexual activity. But things change when girls reach adolescence. The changes in the way the body looks and feels indicate to the girl that she is transitioning into womanhood. Teenage boys and adult men start to look at girls in a different way. We notice it, and we understand that we are becoming sexual beings.
God bless. Sexy American Eagle.
From then on, parents, school teachers, the government make it clear that it is our responsibility to manage our sex appeal. No crop tops, no short skirts, no cleavage, no nipples appearing. God damn it, you're distracting boys. But hey, don't cover yourself with a headscarf or a long dress. You don't look like a girl anymore. No, you must find a balance between the two. Don't show too much skin, but still, show us a little bit, please. Now, adolescence is also a time where the pressure to be cool is quite strong. In a consumerist society, being cool means having the right clothes, the right shoes, the right accessories. Fashion companies are very much aware of that. They want to turn girls into consumers by selling them clothes that align with the sort of femininity they want to embody. For can-do girls, advertisers will use the aesthetic of sexual liberation and empowerment. They turn feminism into something that can be consumed. In contrast, girl at risks, so just to remind you, girls who want to preserve their reputation and therefore tend to lower their sex appeal to the bare minimum. Well, these girls are consumers of what is now called modest fashion. Modest fashion has become more and more popular in the past couple of years, partly thanks to celebrities like Sofia Richie or Kylie Jenner who have had their modest fashion phase. When you type modest fashion on Google, you see that popular retailers like Zara or ASOS have their own collection, but also that there is a Paris Modest Fashion Week. So this is not a niche phenomenon. Now, as we mentioned, modest fashion is not liked by everybody. This year, the French government has forbidden the abaya, a long dress that covers the entire body except the face and hands. Because the abaya is mostly worn by Arab women, it is believed to be a religious piece of clothing. And it is precisely on that ground that the French government decided to ban it from schools, following the 2004 law that prohibits religious clothes and accessories in state schools. But again, the reality is much more complex than that. Arab women wear the abaya for multiple reasons. Originally, Bedouins women wore it to protect themselves from the sun and heat. Today, Arab women wear the abaya because 1, they want to remain modest for religious reasons, which is different from saying that religion forces them to wear the abaya. The French Council of the Muslim Faith is very clear about it. The abaya is not a religious piece of clothing. And another reason why they might want to wear the abaya is that modest fashion is trendy. These girls want to look like the influencers they follow on TikTok, Instagram, etc. Teenage girls, whether they follow the can-do or the at-risk discourse, want to have the ability to dress the way they want. They feel empowered by that choice. They like the attention, the validation they get from their peers. In a study conducted in urban, deprived areas, sociologist Joëlle Bordet showed that teenage girls wear the abaya, they wear the headscarf to enhance their reputation. She tells the story of an interview session she conducted with a group of young people in those deprived areas. She started asking them questions, and then something really interesting happened. 2 teenage girls wearing the headscarf joined the group, and they were quite late. But the thing is that pretty much everybody in the group stopped and looked at them with admiration. The way they wore the headscarf, the way they moved their body with elegance, the way they expressed their femininity made them look cool to other kids. That's what we mean by reputation. Sure, if you took them out of that area and then put them in a whiter, wealthier area of Paris, then people probably wouldn't look at them the same way. But where they live, dressing in the way they do makes them look cool. Failing to understand that can lead to dangerous conclusions like these girls are forced by their fathers to wear the headscarf, to wear the abaya, or they got radicalized online and soon they will preach political Islam in our country. When the French government decides that the abaya is a religious piece of clothing, well, they are the one radicalizing those teen girls. Because as we explained earlier, many of those girls choose to wear the abaya for cultural reasons more than religious reasons. It sends a very strong message. It tells these girls that the way they dress goes against the Republican principle of laïcité, that we can translate as Republican secularism. The way they dress is described as a threat. It reinforces the us versus them discourse. French people, for example, often believe that the abaya, the headscarf, are signs of radicalization. That's why they ban the headscarf and the abaya. They want to avoid any form of radicalization, but in doing so, they prevent young Arab women, for whom remaining modest is important, from accessing higher education, from doing sports. They prevent them from having a life outside the home, from meeting people, from sharing that perspective as Arab women, from interacting with other cultures and growing as individuals. And that goes against France's motto, which is liberty, equality, fraternity. Now let's go back to the formation of the sexual self and conclude this video. We argued earlier that sexualization is associated with consumption. Whether it's a padded bra, whether it's an abaya, can-do girls and girls at risk can express their femininity through clothing. But consumption is performative, it's about appearance, aesthetics. It does not necessarily reflect one's beliefs. I'm thinking about rich cultured kids dressing as working class people, or crypto bros adopting a counterculture aesthetic. Well, it's the same for a lot of teenage girls who adopt a sexually liberated aesthetic. They understand what sexuality is through consumptions, through ads, movies, through peach, meaning through the male gaze. I should say we because I was one of those teenage girls. They rely on the scripts that are given to them, and those scripts miss the very important notion of female desire. Michelle Finet already talked about it in 1988 in her essay Sexuality, Schooling and Adolescent Females, the Missing Discourse of Desire, and I don't feel like we have made a lot of progress. We want to preserve kids from discussing things like sexuality and even more the notion of desire because we don't trust them. We want to preserve their innocence. We're scared that discussing those topics will encourage them to be sexually active and will put them at risk. However, countless studies point to the contrary. Comprehensive sexual knowledge helps teenagers to better navigate the transformations in their bodies, their desires or lack of desires. It teaches them to understand how other bodies function and to respect them. Today we talked about teenage girls, how fast they become aware of their own sexuality and how it impacts others, boys, men, the goddamn French government. We showed that teenage girls respond to the way society looks at them in different ways. The can-do way, which is reminiscent of the sexual liberation discourse, and the at-risk way that encourages them to prioritize modesty. their choice to align with this or that discourse is motivated by a lot of factors: class, ethnicity, religion, geography, friendships, etc., which means that it can change across time. Some teenage girls wear the abaya or the headscarf to show their pride to be culturally different, and then stop wearing it once they become adults. Other teenage girls go through a phase during which they dress in a very provocative way in order to stand out, but then go back to a more traditional way of dressing. It is our job as adults. I felt so old saying this. Technically, I'm Gen Z, but anyway, it is our job to empathize with teenagers because we've been there. We know how weird this time of our life was. We know the peer pressure, the desire to stand out or to fit in. Those years did not necessarily define us for the rest of our lives, so let's chill a little bit. Let's help teenagers navigate those difficult years. Let's listen to what they have to say and learn from them too. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, of course, this video focused on heterosexual teenage girls, but it would be really interesting to investigate how queer teenage girls kind of challenge all of the things I have said today. But yeah, feel free to use the comment sections for that, and don't forget to like, to subscribe if it's not already done. I would like to say a big thank you to my patrons for their support, and a special thanks to top tier patrons: Patrick Riley, Boris, Ria, Joey, Yvonne, Jason, Rémi, Trebizon, Toki, Korichi, Tristan, Patricia, Donage, Ian, Alex, Ren, Sam, Manuel, Alexis, and Perry. Now, before I leave, I need to talk to you about today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. You can create your own website around your preferred aesthetic from a catalog of templates and use it as a landing platform for all the activity you do: YouTube, online shop, blog, podcast, photography, etc. Once that is set up, you can connect all your social media accounts and share content between different platforms. Squarespace can also help you create effective email campaigns to really connect with your community. Finally, they have this very cool feature where you can connect and learn from other creators like Adrien Raquel, who will show you how you can best use the platform. If you feel like Squarespace is made for you and you want to check it out, go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you've experimented and you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/AliceCapelle to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you, Squarespace, for sponsoring the video, and yeah, see you very soon. Salut!